Welcome back to another episode of Table Ready Gaming. Today, we're going to have some fun building a creepy looking shrine thing to Lolth out of some cheap things I found at the dollar store / thrift shop. And, you know, some trash I had lying around in my, oh, I could build something cool with this bin. If you enjoy seeing me turn cheap toys into D&D terrain, please just crawl on over to that like button and give it a gentle caress. This will really help the video in the YouTube algorithm and lets me see which videos have higher engagement and decide what kind of content you enjoy watching, and in the end, just helps me make more content for you in the future. Also, before I go any further, I just wanted to point out that this is an extremely late collaboration with some of my other fellow mini-tubers. Specifically, Lila the Mini Witch, Ninetail Miniatures, Patchwork EM, and finally, Nate's Miniatures. All the links to their videos will be down in the description. I'll put them in a playlist so it's easy for you to check them out. So let's get down to the hobby bench and I'll show you what I did. So, I have to be honest, I sort of started this project like a year ago when I was building my other dollar store challenge video, and I had to pop apart an old Aladdin toy. It was Princess Jasmine, and I used her body for the base of my Shrine to the Deep Queen. I, of course, had her head left over, and it was just kind of sitting there on my hobby bench, with some of those plastic spiders I had left over from my first YouTube video where I made a bunch of cheap giant spiders for D&D out of some Halloween decorations. I then sort of just glued her head on top of a spider body and thought, wow, that's super creepy looking. I had to cut her hair to make it fit the sculpt, and I just had to patch this back together with some 2-part epoxy. It's not really the cleanest work, but yeah, you don't even notice it in the final piece. I also thought I needed to make her human face a little bit more creepy, so I just glued the mandibles from the spider back onto her cheeks. And then you just let the model sit for almost a year. The other day, I was running late for this challenge, and having just finished a very large army project, I kind of wanted a bit of a palate cleanser. And that's when I found this little spider goddess sitting on my shelf of shame, and I thought, hey, it's a good idea to pick her back up and wrap it up. However, the next issue I have was trying to figure out how I would integrate her into a board. I wanted her to sit on some sort of like raised dais thing, that way I can easily pop it onto other terrain, and kind of make her the centerpiece for some big fight in the dungeon room. I found this bit of plastic packaging from something, I really can't remember what it was from, and figured it was about the right size and could get the job done. Plus, it had some pretty cool indents on the side, so it was a little bit more interesting than just, you know, a square. So I then cut some bits of square plastic rod to fit the sides. I find it's easier to cut these bars longer than what you need, and then just butt them up against each other and trim off the excess. Especially when you're measuring things at the small scale, it's just easier than making sure everything's the right size. I then kind of thought the sides still need a little bit more detail. It needed something between these two rod things. At first I thought, skulls, because, you know, when in doubt, take a note out of Games Workshop's design journal and add more skulls. But they were just a little too small. So I instead took apart this old beaded necklace I just had lying in the junk bin. These little beads don't quite touch the top support, but it's close enough for gaming distances. Next, I needed to figure out what to do about the top of the platform. It just looks a little too flat and boring and under-detailed. My first thought was to add some texture with clay and a rolling pin. But in the end, I decided I really didn't want to wait for this to dry, so I instead grabbed a bit of crafting foam and cut it to fit. I then traced straight lines in the foam with a pencil and made them all into jagged angles. I really like the look of this texture, and in the end, I'll probably make a battle board, you know, for a dark arc dungeon. But I'll probably have to use some larger foam, because the lines kind of got lost in the final piece. I then decided that I didn't want this platform just to be a square, so I had these leftover connector bits from a shelf thing I just built. And I cut one in half with my Dremel tool and glued them on the sides. They made cool little, like, offering tables or something. Anyhow, they're just a smidge higher than the rest of the platform, so I added some more plastic cards to the bottom of the platform to rise it all up so it matches. In the end, I kind of wish I added a little bit more brick texture to the sides of this, because that detail down there is not the best. And, you know, whatever. I was just following the crafting muse at the time. But that doesn't mean I don't like to review my work, so I have better ideas for the future. It was about time that I decided to make my Lolth statue a little bit more creepier and spider-like. I did this by drilling out Jasmine's human eyes and replacing them with small metal ball bearings. I feel like having 2 clusters of 4 eyes was suitably creepy. Plus, the original eyes were just kind of painted on, so they wouldn't have shown up once the model was primed. Now that the statue was done, I needed to attach it to the rise dais. I knew I wanted the spider to look like it was rising up and crawling down, you know, looking over her followers. But these spiders, they don't support their own weight. So I cheated and glued down some decorative rocks. I then attached Lolth to these rocks and made it look like she was trying to climb down the cave wall or something to greet her followers. I then decided to spruce up her offering table thing by sneaking in at least 2 skulls into the build. Then gluing on some leftover plastic bits into the spaces between the top and middle support thing, just to add a little bit more flavor. For the last part of this build, I sealed the foam with a totally unique technique you'll only see on this channel and nowhere else in the D&D terrain crafting community. And that was to seal the foam with a mixture of Mod Podge and black craft paint. I then primed this model black, knowing I was going to try some color shifting paints on the final build. I went ahead and gave the entire thing a gloss varnish as well. I really love this part of the building process because the black primer brings everything together and you can really start to see what the final piece will look like. Now, if you're not that big into Dungeons and Dragons, you may not be familiar with who Lolth is. Officially, in the 5th edition lore, she's a chaotic evil goddess, known as Queen of the Spiders, and she overlooks the demon web pits. And this is probably the most influential goddess to the Drow. She's kind of the goddess of deception and treachery and just all around poor table manners. She even curses some of her followers by turning them into driders or half spider, half drow when they displease or fail her, making them into pretty fanatical cultists. In my world, however, I use Lolth almost straight out of canon. She's still a major deity to the Drow/Dark Elves. But in my world, where she differs is that all the elves were once united under a single deity and ruled pretty much all the planes of existence. They had one of the only multi-plane empires. However, in this quest to be the best and the only god, the elven god found something he couldn't quite handle, and it killed him. This led to an event known as the Sundering, and at the death of their god, it caused the elves to lose their immortality, and they now age at a normal rate as all other mortals. So in an instance, all the oldest elves simply basically faded to dust and ended the elven empire in a matter of seconds. This has also led to a pretty large celestial power vacuum, and now all the celestial beings are trying to ascend to fill it. Lolth is one of these beings. She's still a major power in the Dark Elf pantheon, but the Dark Elves are more bent on restoring their species' power to the former glory it once had, no matter the cost. And they'll even turn to some dark gods if that'll help them get it done. But unlike the official lore, she's trying to grow her power base wherever she can, and she's not monogamous to just the Drow. And she has cults from all the sentient species. Effigies to her glory can be found in cold, dank caves where lowly goblin shamans debase themselves in front of crude statues of mud and dung, to human cults whispering of dark gifts from an 8-eyed benefactor, up to elaborate temples of gilded black elder glass, which are the center to all Dark Elf settlements. Now, if you've made any changes to the D&D Gods official canon, I would love to hear how you're using it in your own games. Personally, I feel like I steal some of my best ideas from the internet's RPG hive mind, and frankly, I just really love nerding out with my viewers. Now, the plan was to keep the painting for this piece very simple. So I started by airbrushing my 3-color shifting paints together. Now, I'm really still trying to learn the best way to film myself airbrushing and how to get the best results out of this tool. So sorry, this part's a little out of focus because I'm the best YouTuber. Anyhow, if you want to learn more about color shifting paints, I suggest checking out a video by Sword and Steel or Dana Howl. I'll post both of those in the description down below. Once I got the crazy metallics done, I knew I wanted to separate the statue from the base. So I just went ahead and painted the base with different layers of gray. There's nothing too fancy here. Just start with a darker color and then start stippling on some lighter colors. Then I wanted to bring some real bling to the Lolth statue, so I painted her crown and these little support bits with a metallic gold paint. I really love the look of this true metallic line, even though I do need to clean up with alcohol and use a synthetic brush. I then highlighted some bits of the metal with a true metal silver and painted the skull silver and the eyes of the statue also silver. Now, one of my favorite bits of artwork is iconic to D&D, and it's this one of the dwellers pulling gems out of the statue of some dark god. I kind of want to imply that the statue was made of valuable treasure, and it will represent the loot at the end of a dungeon instead of just a stack of coins. Will my players be willing to risk Lolth's wrath by defacing her temple, purely for monetary gain? Of course they will! Anyhow, I was able to get really easy gem effects by painting some green contrast paint over the silver metallic. And even that little gold bit in the middle of her crown. This really is a lazy painter's trick to simple gemstones. Then I did some edge highlighting on the stone and bathed the entire platform in a gloss black wash, as I wanted the stone to have an obsidian shimmer, kind of like it was polished. This effect is subtle, and I think if I really want to liven it up, I'll have to hit it with another coat of varnish. Before we jump into the final shots and wrap this all up, I really need to extend an overdue thank you to 3 people, and those are my Patreons, present and past. There's Tarek Shelter, Jamie B, and Kim Harder Fogg. Thank you guys so much for the support. It really means a lot to me. Now, if you'd like to see more of this model, be sure to head on down to the social media links below. And if you've made it this far, perhaps you consider subscribing, if you haven't already. You might also enjoy watching another one of my videos. Anyhow, I'm Dave, this is Table Ready Gaming, and I want to thank you for watching. Bye for now, and I'll catch you in the next video.